We also asked, how much is this country governed according to the will of the people? And I should underscore, this is, of course, done before all the changes that occurred. This one, for example, was done in 2008, but some of the polling is as late as 2010. So how much is this country governed according to the will of the people? On a scale of 0 to 10, just 3.2. No, they're not unwilling to express some reservations. Well, how much should this country be governed according to the will of the people on a scale of 0 to 10? 8.3 is the mean response. And then we looked at how many people gave a higher score for what it should be than what it is, and that came up to 97%. So it's these numbers we've asked them around the world, and this is one of the highest numbers, I think probably the highest, expressing dissatisfaction with the level of democratic representation in their country. And this is really, a sign of what came later, and it's certainly suggestive that it isn't just some urban young people who are feeling dissatisfaction with the degree of democratic representation in Egyptian society until now. Now, Pew put forward an argument and to see how people responded to this. Some people in our country feel that democracy is a Western way of doing things that would not work here. Others think that democracy is not just for the West and can work well here. So when you give this argument, it comes down a bit, but you still get a clear majority, 6 in 10, saying that it can work here. But 35% respond to the idea that there's something Western about it. Now, on human rights, very high levels of support for classical liberal human values. How important is it for people to have the right to express any opinion, including criticisms of the government or religious leaders? And 80% say that it's important. Do you think that in Egypt the press should have more freedom, the same amount of freedom, or less freedom? So this is a direct critique of the current level. And again, this was in 2008. And 64% say that there should be more press freedom in Egypt. And again, you have to keep in mind this was taken during a time when people may have had some nervousness about giving answers like this, and still it was coming through this strongly. Do you think that people in Egypt should have the right to read whatever is on the internet, or do you think the government should have the right to prevent people from having access to some things on the internet? Well, 65% say that people should have the right to read whatever is on the internet. How important is it for people to have the right to express any opinion, including criticisms of the government or religious leaders? Again, underscore the religious leaders as part of that. 90% say that it's important. That's an error there. That's one I already read. I apologize for this. Was actually about women having equal rights, and it was 9 in 10 supported the idea that women should have rights equal to men. In Egypt, people of any religion should be free to worship according to their own beliefs. 88% agree. Now, at the same time, lest you get too sanguine here, there's also strong support for Islamist ideas, and even when some of them are formulated in ways that seem to contradict liberal values. Islam should play a central role in the government of Egypt. 92% agree. Do you think that the government in Egypt should be based on universal principles of democracy that apply in all countries, should be based on a form of democracy that is unique for Islamic countries, or should not be based on democracy? And the middle one being, of course, a principle that the Muslim Brotherhood endorses. And you have 60% saying that it should be based on a form of democracy that is unique for Islamic countries, while 4 in 10 saying it's should be universal. Only 1% saying it should not be. Now, Shari'a. In general, which of these statements come closest to your own point of view? Shari'a must be the only source of legislation. Shari'a must be a source of legislation, but not the only source. Shari'a should not be a source of legislation. And you get 67% saying it should be the only source of legislation, which again somewhat contradicts the view that the will of the people should be the source of authority. And another 24% saying that it should be a source. Only 1% saying it should not be a source at all. In the way that Egypt is governed, do you think Sharia should play a larger role, a smaller role, or should play about the same role as it plays today? And 57% say it should play a larger role. This is a political factor that is not likely to go away. This is something that whoever is dealing with Egypt really needs to take this into account. Now, here's an idea that has been put forward by the Muslim Brotherhood and others, that there should be a body of senior religious scholars that has the power to overturn laws when it believes they are contrary to the Quran. Now, we tested that against the idea that if laws are passed by democratically elected officials and consistent with the Constitution, they should not be subject to a veto by religious scholars. So this is one of these efforts to try to, that the Muslim Brotherhood has been put forward as a way of kind of bridging democratic and Islamist ideas. Some argue that it's not really that different from what you have in liberal democracies, where you have a constitution and a Supreme Court that puts constraints on what the legislature can do, though obviously it would be much broader than any conventional Western or liberal constitution. So what's the view on this? 3/4 endorse this idea that there should be some kind of review by senior religious scholars. Now, again, you have to see that both of these forces operating huge support. Now, as a result, you do see signs of conflict in some sets of questions. One that's, I think, interesting is the idea that religion should be a private matter, should not play a role in government. And this, in a sense, is a core religious idea, that religion should be a personal thing and that the public sphere should be secular. And asked this question, you get a kind of almost a divided response. Pew asked one that was similar, they got an exactly divided response. But more actually disagree with this view. Well, all people in Egypt should have the right to change their religion if they choose to. This is obviously a big issue with apostasy and so on. And here you get a plurality saying, yeah, they should have the right to change to their religion if they choose to. And then we present the statement, our government should punish an Egyptian who changes their religion from Islam to a non-Muslim religion, and you get 75% endorsing that idea. So there are a lot of different forces here, not all that well integrated. Here's another one interesting one. Islamist groups should not be allowed to organize and run candidates because their ultimate goals are not consistent with democracy, versus all people should have the right to organize themselves into political parties and run candidates, including Islamist groups. And here you have only a modest majority saying that they should be able to. So there is some mistrust of Islamist groups too. There are some reservations about Islamist groups, whether they are truly democratic. So all of these are different forces that are going to be going into the mix as in the political process that we're going to be seeing. At the same time, you find in the focus groups and in polls a strong belief that this process of integrating Islam and democracy can be done. Presented the statement that democracy is compatible with Islam. 91% assert that it is. And I should underscore in the focus groups, people really wanted to drive that home. This was that no, they are not in a separate system. The argument was that democracy is not compatible with Islam. It makes people the source of law rather than the Quran. We wanted to throw that at them. Which is, of course, a key argument of radical Islamism, Al-Qaeda, and so on. And 72% reject that argument. Or that democracy is not compatible with Islam. It makes people the ultimate sovereign rather than God. And same effect, 3/4 rejected.